Well, I would say it's like Groundhog Day, but it keeps getting worse. Like it starts off very similar, but then the nightmare just keeps getting worse. The Sharks lose today 8-3 against the Washington Capitals. We'll be talking about that and some more after this. But first, if you want to be a part of the show and Teal together with us, come and join the conversation. Check us out in the YouTube chat, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, SoundCloud, Reddit, Discord, TikTok shenanigans, all of that and more at tealtownusa.com. And of course, if you want to support the pod, hit us up at tealtownusa on Venmo or in the super chat. We appreciate all of the patronage. It goes to a better show. So we'll continue to keep on doing it. But I am here joined by Mr. Mark Eisenberg. Mark, I would ask you how you're doing this evening because you're on the East Coast. But, I mean, after that, I mean, what more can I say? How are you doing, sir?
Oh, my God. I'm great. I literally want to start this show off, like if I could. I don't know if you remember that scene with the Joker in The Dark Knight where he goes into the hospital and he sees like Two-Face Harvey and he's just like, hi. Like that's literally the response I want to do to start. So I'm just like, my God. It's just painful. It's so painful.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like, look, we're both on Team Tank for sure, especially with the types of talent that you can get in this draft. But I mean, there is a certain level of play, competitive play that you expect out of the team, and you know, just as I thought I couldn't be any more disappointed, they go and do one of these on me. So, you know, again, we were talking a little bit earlier. I guess I'm just a glutton for punishment at this point.
Yeah. I mean, look, all you want is some sort of entertainment. The first period started. There's some entertainment, but it's just like at this point, it's like laughing out loud at how bad it is entertainment. That's the only way you could do it. Because like if you're not doing that, you're probably wanting to cry.
Yeah, and great segue, by the way. In that first period, Tomas Hertl getting the Sharks on the board first. And, I mean, throughout the first period, I thought the Sharks played really well. I mean, they had a majority of the shots. It was 20-5, in fact. But they looked crisp. They looked good through the neutral zone. I felt that they had a strong forecheck against Washington, and I thought Eki came out with a fire under his butt, making plays, looking good on the power play. But Tomas Hertl would get his 16th of the year with Karlsson and Eklund getting the assist. Again, I really liked Eki's game. I thought he played very well on that power play. I felt, you know, he added a layer of creative dimension that's not Erik Karlsson. So I think that for me was an encouraging sign. But what'd you see from Eki's debut, Mark?
I agree. Good puck movement. I liked that they immediately threw him on the first unit. He whiffed a couple shots on the power play, but I liked his eagerness there. So, yeah, good first game from him this season. I was very curious to see how he was going to do. I was curious to see how many spinoramas he was going to try. We only got one. But, yeah, you know, he wasn't a problem, that's for sure. He was good. You know, it was a reason to watch the team. You know, it's like him and Karlsson are the main drawers right now. And, you know, you obviously got Hertl and Barabanov, but, like, it's Karlsson and Eklund.
Right, exactly. And, you know, again, one of the most creative forwards I think that the Sharks have in the prospect system for sure. And, you know, bringing that layer to the power play, I think, again, just makes it so that it's something interesting and fun to watch. But the Sharks would continue, I think, the good play and really, you know, continue to press. And Alexander Barabanov would end up getting his 13th of the year at 15:30. Couture and Johnson getting the assists there. So, you know, Alexander Barabanov putting together a quiet, really, really strong season. And maybe not so quiet anymore because it's career years, but I felt like he was kind of going under the radar in the first half, and now I think he's really getting the attention that he should be getting, because I think he's done great work. And again, a guy that was kind of an afterthought piece that has really become part of the core moving forward. And I think for me, this is a piece that couldn't flourish on a stacked Toronto team. So it's good to see Barbi, again, playing well. And again, I thought all of the forwards were doing a great job in the first. But I think that's the extent of our accolades, because I think the harbinger for me was that double minor at the end, and the power play looked flat. It just seemed like they got kind of complacent again after the 2 goals. What'd you see from that double minor at the end there? I think it was on Zetterlund, who got the stick in the face, with the I think his nose getting clipped there.
Yeah, that's a good way to kill the momentum you've developed, especially going into the next period. But I think they still had some decent movement, especially, again, with Eklund out there. Him and Karlsson kind of moving around either the top of the circles or around the blue line, but just nothing dangerous enough, And then you have a 4-minute power play, which I personally always seem to hate 4-minute power plays. I feel like if you do not score one, it just deflates the team, and that's kind of exactly what you saw. So, yeah, that was kind of the start of the decline on the night.
Yeah, and like you had said, I think not only is it a 4-minute power play, but it's a broken up 4-minute power play, which I think is just the kiss of death for a power play there. So I really wanted to see them come out and put the pedal to the metal and really get another goal and to really kind of solidify the lead. But instead, we got a very similar script as we did against St. Louis, and again, very similar to Montreal, where they start out strong and collapsed inward. And going into that but again, it's the start of the will. There we go. Mark, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, great. I guess my computer is deciding to just throw up all over me. But what'd you see from that goal that really got the momentum going for Washington there?
I would say I think it was a little bit of the start of just what was not a great night from Kähkönen. I thought for much of the night, obviously the Sharks defense wasn't helpful. And that goes without saying. I feel like we've seen that much of the season, but this is the NHL and you still expect your goalie to play to a certain level, right? So I think just watching him and his technique tonight and his technical skills, the side to side looked pretty awful. The positioning looked awful. And I feel like there was several goals where you don't want to say it was absolutely the goalie's fault, because maybe it was like a 2-on-1 or a clear, dangerous shot. But I just feel like Kähkönen was just not on his game at all. And it started here in the second period. He looked decent in the first. He made the saves he needed to make. But in the second period, I feel like he was lost.
Yeah, and I thought that he kind of resorted or regressed. Catching my own words there, but regressed back to some really bad habits of getting deep in the net, not really squaring up in the middle, but kind of catty cornering onto one side and hugging the posts. But again, it was the start of the onslaught, because Abu Kube and would get a score 11 minutes and 30 seconds in that second period. So maybe 2.5 minutes later, and now Washington has tied it up, and you could see the boys gripping the sticks, and it was just, like I said, Groundhog Day all over again. And really, I mean, like you had said, it kind of started with some poor play from Kakkonen, and then kind of devolved from there because we started to see Washington gain momentum through the neutral zone. The dumping and chipping and strong forecheck just evaporated in the second, and Washington had their way with them.
Yeah, I think also with Heckman is there were several goals that went through the 5 hole. He just looked shaky the whole evening. But yeah, it's amazing how the exact same script can play out 2 games in a row like this. If you were someone who wants to bet the team that's losing at the end of the first place, end of the first period, especially when that team that's winning is as bad as the Sharks are, you probably made a good amount of money over the last 2 days because it's just carbon copy games. I don't understand how that happens. And you saw it with the coach. I mean, I'll let you get to that, but the frustration on this team must be through the roof at this point.
Yes, and Ricky, thank you so much. Abe Kubel. Woo! Thank you, sir. Ooh, I wonder where he's from in this world. That's a hell of a last name. But just when you thought it was bad, it gets worse because then Matt Irwin launches a bomb from the point, and this one just wasn't touched. It just went in completely clean, and Kakkonen is sitting there looking like, where'd it go? Like, this one to me was when you saw the dam really break open, and again, I think after this one, you could just see the team collectively sag because this one, I think was the worst of the night. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. And even if he couldn't see the puck, because I know there was some commotion obviously in front of the net, but again, you just want a goalie's either his positioning to be in the right place. You just didn't see that at all from Kakkonen tonight. There wasn't, except for that glove save in the third period, that was pretty nice. His fundamentals just weren't there. And again, for any one of the goals, you probably could have found an excuse, but when you put them all together, it's just a collaboration of crap.
Very good. Collaboration of crap. I like that. Well, we talked about the avalanche that was soon to come, and Craig Smith completing the Groundhog Day, Sharks whoopsie whoops, coming in and getting his 6th of the season at 19:02 to make it 4-2. And like I think we had kind of both just said that the wheels just came off after this because going into that third, it was much more of the same. This time at 5:50, TJ Oshie, which was another really bad goal because you had Kappo Kakkonen launching the puck directly at TJ Oshie. And I mean, yes, TJ Oshie didn't do a nice, spinorama to get that goal in, but 5-hole again, position was not great. And, just when you thought Kappo Kakkonen had started to turn the corner with his mechanics and really look like he was, fundamentals were really starting to get in gear, I just feel like this one just puts him back to square one again.
Yeah, I think that's my main concern with him. We saw really good hockey at the end of last season from him, right? He came to San Jose, looked good. And we've seen pockets this year, but I feel like that's kind of what we gotten from all of our goalies since pretty much the Nabokov era, right? You had Jones actually at least had a good full season or two there. And Reimer obviously was fantastic last year, but we just haven't had sustained, I don't want to use the word excellence because there's not too many goalies that can do that, but sustained positive play from goalies for long periods of time. Like Adin Hill last year had games where he looked really good, and it's the same thing with Kakkonen. I just don't feel necessarily like he is a goalie you can build around because I just never see consistent enough play from him where I'm like, this guy is a number one.
Right. And that's concerning, especially because of the piece that you gave up to get him. I mean, Jacob Middleton, I think you were definitely selling high to get Kappo Kakkonen, but I thought, Kappo Kakkonen was going to be part of the answer going forward in goal, and especially something to help stabilize the goaltending core. But it just looks like every single goaltender that we've tried out and maybe that speaks more to the system than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
But it just seems like it's been the goalie carousel, and nobody has been able to really play, in front of this back end. So I think it's both structurally. It has to do with the defensive positioning and the defensive play that the Sharks are rolling out on a nightly basis. But I also think that there hasn't been a goaltender that's really ran with it outside of those couple of examples that you had given. So again, is it the chicken or the egg? Who knows? It could be both. But it just leaves more questions than answers, and I think that's for me the biggest issue. Quickly, thank you SG Sports Channel, Sports Talk Channel, super chat from him. Thoughts on David Quinn's ejection? Well, I think we had seen some. First, I think he berated the official a little bit. I mean, it was pretty bad, and he definitely chewed him out, and I think the official definitely deserved some of it. But you also have to remember that there was one of the officials that got hurt. So trying to ref a game old school style with just one official and two linesmen is difficult. So I don't want to completely dump on the officials here. But again, the Sharks have not made their own luck and have not moved their feet enough to garner penalties and to get power plays. So I think that that's part of the problem. So you don't get calls when your effort is subpar. And again, this season I think goes to show you that the team's effort, especially on the forward side, has ebbed and flowed, and as a result, power plays being called for the Sharks have been inconsistent. I don't know about you, Mark, but I mean, what's your thoughts on the officiating tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the officiating was really a factor one way or another. I think Quinn's explosion there was merely just the frustration boiling over. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like to coach a team where you see some of these things happening. I mean, he's said it in several press conferences post game where he's like, he just hasn't seen something like this before, where the Sharks either play a really good game and find a way to lose and it's a close game, or you even have performances like tonight and the last game where it's just a team just falls apart despite looking good for a start. Like you hope when you jump out to a 2-goal lead that you carry that momentum through a game, but this team just isn't equipped to do that. And I just can't imagine what that's like as a coach, because there's only so much you can do. I really have had a hard time judging Quinn because this team is just so bad, and I don't really want to put that on him because I feel like he's dealing with what should really be half of an AHL lineup. So I think you just saw that kind of boiling over today in that moment. Probably wasn't his finest moment, but honestly, I like the emotion from him. I support it.
Yeah, and thank you everybody for listening in and tuning in. If you're a Washington Capitals fan, we appreciate you also tuning in as well. We're at 50 viewers right now, so just want to plug the subscribe button. We go live after every game. Will help be your Sharks therapy for the evening because Lord knows we need it. But getting back to that game, Nico Sturm would get a garbage time goal, his 13th on the season. One guy that I think has been a really great addition and a real good glue guy that I give props to Greer for has been Nico Sturm. I've liked his game. I like what he brings. Good to see him getting his 13th on the season and Gregor and Karlsson getting the assists there. Again, I've liked what I've seen from Nico, and I think he's part of the solution going forward for sure. So from that perspective, I think it's good to see him get on the board, even if it is a garbage time goal. And then we got the Alexander Ovechkin show. So Alexander would get his 34th of the season. Wilson and Karlsson getting the assists at 9:11 in the third. He'd follow that up with his 35th, with Iorio and Sandin getting assists there at 16:05. And then just to add some salt in the wound, Dylan Strome would get his 14th, with Milano getting the assist at 17:30, which would end the night's action 8-3 Washington. And again, an implosion, some really lackadaisical play, and that's what happens. And this Washington Capitals team looked hungry. They looked like a team, trying to hunt down a playoff spot, and manhandled them, used their physicality to really lean on the Sharks. And I think what I'm coming away from this is Sharks need to beef up, and Sharks need to get some more they need to get more athleticism, and I think they need to get bigger, and if they want to really try to compete and get get back into the swing of things. Because boy, I mean, a Tom Wilson and Yevgeny Kuznetsov and a Alexander Ovechkin, I mean, will do wonders. But I don't know if that really jumped out on the screen to you, but the hits would end up being 28-23 in favor of the Capitals. And like I said, Capitals just looked like the manlier team.
Yeah, 100% agree. They're more physical, they're bigger, and I also just like the way they play. You watched, one thing I noticed this entire game, and it happened to be a few times with Eklund because he just happens to be a little bit on the smaller side, but like any time a Sharks player went near their goalie as the whistle was blowing, you just saw like 2 or 3 guys grab Sharks players, just pull them out of the way, manhandle them. And it's just like, you could see in those moments just like the strength or physicality differences there, because that just doesn't really happen around Kakkonen very often, or whoever's in net for the Sharks. Like, I know Greer is working towards trying to beef this team up and change the identity to more of a physical, hardworking team. But I just don't think we're anywhere near that point, And then not only that, a team like the Caps, for example, they're combining skill with that physicality. Whereas the Sharks, you look at some of their more, I guess, bigger guys, it's not always the most talented guys,
Right. And we'd end the night. I mean, the Sharks would end up having 41 shots on goal, which is a decent shot total, but I think doesn't really tell the whole tale, because the shots on goal for the Capitals would be 30, and I'm looking at this stat line for Kakkonen, and I'm doing a slap my head here, because it's, oh boy, he saved 22 of 30 for a .733 save percentage. And I don't know why he wasn't pulled. I mean, maybe because James Reimer had the game the last time, but I mean, I think you got to send a message that he's got to be accountable, and I think we talked about at least 4 or 5 goals that were of the really crappy variety to let in. Again, every time he seems like he takes a step forward, he takes a really big step backwards, and the Sharks have him for team control for one more year. But I don't know what we have with him. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I think I'm on the exact same page with you. And the thing is, this was a step back in that it was his first kind of real bad game, I'd say, since January. If you look at the numbers, first game sub 900 save percentage, and I don't know, it's just a combination of goaltending and defense. And again, I feel somewhat bad crapping on him as much as we have, looking at the names in our defense and seeing how they play. Like, even our better defensemen, or players who are supposed to be a better defenseman, like Ferraro, he hasn't been playing well. And obviously we know Vlasic is not playing to his contract. He rarely ever does. But yeah, you just want to see better. And as a franchise, you don't really know what the next step is, because you got Reimer obviously becoming a free agent, and he's expressed he wants to stay with the club, possibly. But he obviously also just expressed he was kind of disappointed that he's not competing for a cup. So you have him, and then you look at the prospects we have. None of them are blue chip prospects. Several of them are actually having somewhat mediocre years where they're playing. So I don't know. Is there a brighter light on the horizon? I don't know.
Yeah, and one thing pulling out of the chat, Dave. Thanks, thanks as always for hopping on and commenting. I think the sad thing is we're not using the Caps as putting them up as a good team. I think if you want Exhibit A, that's Boston, but it goes to show you, it's like we just play it's like Harlem Globetrotters versus the Generals, right? I mean, and the fact that it's that much of a contrast between what Washington has and San Jose has, and you look at Washington, and in the grand scheme of things, they're a mediocre team. That just shows you how far and how little talent that this team has. So again, I don't think we're putting them up there. It's more the fact that the Sharks just really suck that bad. Going quickly, I did want to a little bit espouse upon Alexander Ovechkin, because this is a guy that's honing in on Wayne Gretzky, my favorite non-Shark since I started watching hockey. I've always been Team Ovi in the Team Ovi versus Crosby debate, and a guy that grew up as a Sharks fan. I wish he would have donned the teal, and I wish the Sharks could have gotten a player like that. But it's just amazing to see what he's doing, and I think he's gonna pass Gretzky, and I think he should, because I think he's the greatest goal scorer in league history. I don't know. What's your thoughts on Ovi, Mark?
Fully agree. And I've been Team Ovi since pretty much day one. I mean, I've also kind of been a Crosby hater, as much respect as I do have for his game.
Exactly.
But I mean, his early years, I hated him, and I never changed since. So he's one of those people that I love to hate, because I absolutely respect how good of a hockey player he is. But Ovi, on the other hand, has just always been kind of a fan favorite for me. So I was actually happy to kind of see him. If they're going to score 8 goals, I hope he scores as many of them as he can. So
exactly.
I think it's a great record also just for hockey to have it broken. They always say records are made to be broken, and there's certain ones that you think might never be touched. And I think Gretzky's goal record for a while was kind of thought to be that way. But you just look at the longevity of Ovechkin, and it's not surprising, because the guy is built like a tank, and he obviously has one of the best shots in history, and he's just consistent. So it's probably going to take another couple of years, but I'm definitely pulling for him to break that record.
I mean, he's looking like he's going to be over 40 goals again, though. I mean, like, after tonight's game, I think he's on trajectory for over 40 goals. So, I mean, and to do it at his age, I just give him mad props. And again, we wish the grade 8, at least from this corner of the interwebs, great luck on chasing down Wayne. Again, Wayne is the great one for sure, but I think Ovi definitely deserves to be in the pantheon of great players in the NHL. So I just wanted to really give Ovi a little bit of a quick plug here. And going from that, I mean, I want to talk trade deadline, because this is the first show that I've done after the trades and after everything, the dust has settled. And I think we both have a lot of thoughts on it, and especially from the prospect angle. But first, I mean, broad strokes, what were your thoughts on Timo and what the Sharks got? And should Greer have maybe played a little bit harder ball and maybe executed a trade a little earlier, given how much work Doug Armstrong did pre-trade deadline?
So I think I've warmed up to the return. I think some of that is just natural to looking into certain players. You start convincing yourself that the return is better than it was. I've warmed up to it. I still don't really understand some of the decisions the team is making, which kind of feeds into that whole Timo Meier trade. I really do wonder if there was any chance of signing him at any point, whether there was like interest from him, because he obviously it seems like he really wanted to play for a winner. So, you can't blame someone maybe for not wanting to go through a 4 or 5 or whatever amount of year rebuild this is going to take. So I'm positive on some of the pieces we got. I haven't been terribly impressed with the ones who at least have been in the NHL, Zetterlund and Johnson. I think Zetterlund's fine, but I feel like the Devils fans might have been overhyping him just a tad so far. But I'm really going to save my judgment on him until next year, once he's had like a whole camp with the team and, he can get acclimated. So I'm kind of just watching him now just to see if I can notice some traits, some skills that pop out. But I haven't noticed anything from him so far that really tells me he's like a top 6 forward, which is what I heard from some Devils fans. They were like, oh, you're going to love him. He's definitely a potential top 6. So the real pieces for me are the definite first round pick, the potential first round pick, and then Makama Doolin. I'm hoping that's how you say his name.
Yeah, Makama Doolin.
Yeah. So, I'm sour on the Meyer trade, but I've moved on from Meyer now, so I've kind of accepted it and warmed up to it.
Yeah. And then what about some of the edge peripheries with with Bonino, and I think did Nieto move? I don't think Nieto moved, right?
Yeah, he was part of that
Oh,
trade. Yeah,
went back
remember
to
when we got
Colorado. Went back to
yeah,
Colorado.
Cout, yeah. So the way I look at it is I don't really feel like anything was terrible, but I just never feel like Greer gets value. I feel like he's always at least a round or two behind, whether it's a draft pick, the prospect he's picking up. And yes, he's a rookie GM, but I don't really know if that's an excuse. Like, do you really become that much better of a negotiator with experience, or do you become a better talent evaluator? I mean, the guy's been in hockey his whole life, so it's just a matter of I'm just underwhelmed. It's you look even at the Bonino trade. Yeah, we were going to lose him probably at the end of the season. He's an unrestricted free agent, so you're getting something for nothing. But it was a seventh round pick. I mean, we basically traded down in the fifth round as well because the 2024 fifth rounders, I think we traded ours in exchange for a conditional fifth, which I don't know what the exact condition was, but I think they get to choose between two picks. But the way I see it is like you got a seventh rounder for a guy who from a team who's in a playoff race, whereas there's a lot of other teams out there who get like fourths and fifths, and it's just I feel like we're always a round or two behind what we should be getting. So it's in my mind somewhat poor asset management. Um, but there was nothing that I'm like, oh my god, that was awful. So I guess I can't really complain too much, but I just want to see something from Greer where I'm like, that was an amazing trade.
Yeah. So I think for me at least, I was I was upset. I mean, I think I was squarely in the jerk, the hockey jerk mindset of Timo Meier is a player that you're going to be chasing for a long time because you got rid of him. Now, I understand from the contractual standpoint that it was going to be very difficult to keep him under and continue the team as it is. But I mean, a guy who's in his 20s, consistently, a point per game type player, and they just don't grow on trees. And so, I sat with it after the evening, and then I ended up going over to urgent care to get some to get some antibiotics unrelated to how the Sharks are playing. But I was popping on the Jeff Merrick podcast. Jeff Merrick, a great commentator up in Canada, and I think really one of the respected voices from my corner, because not only does he does a lot of homework, but he also does the historical point of view from hockey as well. He's part of the hockey society, historical society, so he's got a lot of knowledge. So a guy that I really enjoy listening to, and he had the GM, I think, from New Jersey on the show, and it just seemed that Greer was very collaborative in his trade approach. I think had a lot of lines of communication, and for me, it wasn't. He didn't dig in because at the beginning of the interview, the GM outlined that there were basically three untouchables, and I think it's Mercer and Quinn and or sorry, not Quinn, Hughes,
Yeah.
and what was the other one? Nemec, thank you. And I think he pretty much outlined that they had drawn a line in the sand that they were not trading those three players, and instead of doing what I would have probably done in that situation, would have been to just hang up the phone. I would have said, if you're going to take three top prospects off of the table, I would have immediately hung up the phone and started saying, okay, if that's the way that you're going to be, and you're not going to give me top prospect currency for the type of player that Timo is, then you're not going to get the player. And I didn't understand why there was just this it almost seemed like, again, a collaborative approach. They just continued to talk and continue to whittle down like what players New Jersey would end up giving. And yes, I know that you want to present a good rapport with your other GMs, but you also have to put a stake in the ground and understand what you have in a player. And again, you had Timo under team control. So, this was an asset. Yes, it was an expiring asset, and yes, the qualifying offer is a big ticket, but it's still team control. And for me, I would have said, look, the asking price is Mercer, a first, and a conditional first. That's what gets you in the door into talking about this, and we move from there. Why he decided to land upon, what is it, the 13th best prospect in New Jersey's system in Mukulin, and not digging in was, again, I think, kind of a mirror image to what we saw with the Brent Burns return, where it was just underwhelming, and it just seemed half-baked. I mean, and so I got this reverse Joe Thornton trade vibe. Honestly, that was the first thing that hit me. It's like, oh, so you traded a point per game guy for a bunch of no-namers. And we now, the dust has settled a little bit, and we've gotten some prospect grades, and they end up being like a B- prospect and a C+ prospect and 2 firsts, not high firsts, for Timo Meier, who is a unique talent. And again, I would have played hardball. I mean, that's just kind of how I would have gone about it. And you don't be afraid to not get anything. Don't be afraid to keep the player. And I came away with a very bad taste in my mouth after that one. And I saw the few trades that they made on the periphery to recoup some draft picks and stuff. But like you had said, I think it seemed like the team assets were undervalued. And I don't know if maybe he's letting the market dictate a little bit to him what the value of his players are. But again, I think a good general manager is able to extract value. I think that was one thing that Doug Wilson did a great job of doing, was extracting value, for his assets, and, drawing a line in the sand to say, hey, this is what they're worth. And I think Greer really does need to polish that part of his, of the GM trade if he wants to be successful.
Yeah, and I think anyone who has listened to me over the last few years knows I was a huge fan of Wilson, and it's pretty much for that exact reason you said. Sure, he's had some questionable contracts, which I'm not going to get into much of a discussion about them, but I feel like most of them, with the exception of 1 or 2, were fairly warranted at the time that they were signed. But the guy just knew how to value trades, and I just haven't seen that from Greer. I mean, specifically on that Meier trade, I think what you were saying, I've echoed similar sentiments. It's just, I don't understand how you let a GM dictate when you're giving up a superstar that my non-NHL players are off the table. And not only just one of them, but like 2 great ones who are good prospects, don't get me wrong, but also a guy like Mercer, who's obviously come on very strong this year. But we're talking about Timo Meier. He's young, and he's a 40-goal scorer, basically, and a unique one at that. Like, he's not, Skinner, for example, who, he's a physical dude. He's huge.
He's a guy you want on your playoff roster.
Yeah, he's an absolute winner. And I don't know. I just don't see how you allow that, but there must be things that go on in the GM world that I just can't comprehend. Because to me, I'm 100% with you. If a guy comes to me, and there was no secret the Devils wanted Meier. I mean, this has been rumored for 2 years that the Devils were interested in Timo Meier. People were coming out with trade proposals last year with Holtz and this and that because it was so obvious the Devils wanted him. So how do you come away? Now, again, I'm a big fan of Mohamed Doolin. I feel like he has a decent upside. Like, if everything goes right, he could be a top pairing, but I think he's going to be for sure a top 4 defenseman. That being said, like I don't see how you can't come away with what's considered a blue chip prospect. We didn't get one, and that's what we need. We need a blue chip prospect because at this point, the only one we have close to that is really Eklund.
Yeah.
So it's disappointing. And look, Greer also went for quantity over quality, which I guess when you look at our prospect pool, there are, I guess, arguments in favor of that. But I just, I don't know. You said it. Like, one is a late first round pick. The average or the percentage of those guys making it and being an impact in the NHL is still only like 30%. And the other one, we need the Devils to make the conference final one of the next 2 years for it to become a first round pick. Otherwise, it's a second round pick and probably a mid to late second round pick at that. So, yeah, to give up Timo, it hurts. We've had maybe 2 guys like him in the entire length of our franchise where they were like that physical and that talented. I mean, I put up him and Nolan in that conversation.
Yep.
You know, so it hurts.
Because he has more talent than Chloe did. I think Chloe definitely, was a little bit more rough and tumble, that's for sure. But I think as far as talent, speed, physicality, I think you're right up there with the Buster reference, because I think he really was the closest thing that we had since Buster that had all of those qualities that you like to see, and I guess qualities that Mike Greer espoused when he came on board and said, this is the way that we want to play. So it's like, I just wish there would have been some more hardball playing. And I think if we're talking about Doug Wilson retrospective, I think all I'll say is this: he had a soft spot for his own players, and I think that's what got him in trouble. And I think again he got oversold on Erik Karlsson, and really he didn't play any hardball there where he really should have, especially with Karlsson coming off the injury history. Yes, he's a super uber talented player and now is playing up to the contract, but at the time, was very inconsistent with the level of play, inconsistent with the health. So those 2 question marks, I think, would have really devalued him in the open market. And I think that was something that Doug didn't really realize and really didn't take into account. But we're coming up on the 40-minute mark here, and just want to start to round it out. What are your thoughts? With the Sharks, playing as they are now, setting themselves up for something good. Where do you want to see the team ended up? I mean, do you want to see them 32nd overall? Do you want to see them come in 31? I mean, I think I would be happy if they came in at because it seems. I know that the percentages favor you, especially if you're in 32, to get number 1 overall, but it just seems like the hockey gods play trick with that number 1 all the time. So I think I'd rather be in the 31 spot if it were up to me, because it gives you the second best odds, and you won't move down, I think, more than say 3 or 4 overall. So what are your thoughts on where the Sharks should end up, and what player are you circling if they don't get number 1 overall, and if they do, I think it's pretty obvious who you pick.
Yeah, I think obviously I would love to finish 32 just because I do want that highest percentage, but I agree with you. There has been some wackiness with the lottery. I think the main goal I'm focusing on right now is hopefully the Sharks finishing in 31 or 32, because the thing is, if they finish in 31, there's no chance of them dropping lower than the 4th overall pick. And this year, it's the top 4 picks that are the must-have players. So, and the Sharks being one of the franchises that probably need it the most, if you think about it. Yeah, it would be great to finish 32 and have, I think, what is the 15 or 18% chance of finishing with the top pick. But if they finish 31, I'll still be in pretty good spirits. If they finish 30 or 29th, I'm going to be very uneasy until after that lottery, because getting pushed out of the top 4 after a season like this would be pretty painful. In that top 4, you're looking at Bedard, Fantilli, Michkov, and Karlsson. I'd be super happy to get any of those. Michkov, I think, is probably the second best of them, but I think his contract situation in Russia might push him down a spot or two. So Fantilli, he's a beast. I think any other year people would be looking at him as number one overall. He's a really good college player. He's having one of the better college seasons of someone his age of all time. And then Bedard, it's like you watch this kid, he's absolutely unreal. I don't want to say he's like the next McDavid, but he's going to be something very special. And I think he immediately changes the time frame of our rebuild if we get him. So, and it also kind of, I think, becomes a place where maybe a free agent wants to come and play here more, because you see a guy like that and you're just like, okay, yeah, I want to play with that kid. I want to be on this team that might be trending up. Whereas the other three, as talented as they are, they may not have quite that draw. So it should be interesting. I have been checking the standings multiple times per day. Like, I'm pretty much always aware of who's playing at 1:00 on a weekend day, who's playing in the evening, who's playing who. And, with the loss today, we're now 2 points clear behind the Ducks. So we are in that third spot, and 3 points clear of Arizona, who's now in the fifth spot, and only 1 point ahead of Chicago with them having 2 games on hand. So at least that's the positives.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you lay it out great. I think, of course, if you get number one overall, Bedard is the guy. And just think about it this way. I mean, you could roll out a line next year of Bedard, Eki, and Bordy, and just you've made a second line, who's gonna be uber talented for the next 10 years. So again, either that, I mean, I think Fantilli, when a guy puts up the kind of numbers that Fantilli does in college, with the amount of time, the amount of reps that they put in the weight room, and they just come out bigger, and I think they just come out a little bit smarter coming out of college. That would be another special type player that would change his trajectory as well. Might not be as like instant as a Bedard, but a guy that you definitely can build around, and a guy that can definitely help move the needle, and brings in a wealth of leadership at a young age, which again I'm all for, and this team, as fragile as it is right now, could definitely use another strong-willed, strong-voiced, voice in that room, especially if it comes from a younger guy. He can help lead from the bottom and help, again, get a guy like Eki and Bordy, get him in the right headspace going into their pro years. So with that, in case you missed it and you want to check us out again, check us out on the YouTube Rewind. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification to know when we go live. Of course, if you're a long timer, you know that we go live after every Sharks game. It's what we do. Yes, it's punishment, but hopefully there are some good things on the on the horizon for sure. But if you can't catch us on the video on demand, check us out on your favorite podcatcher of choice. We're on the Apple Podcast Store, the Google Play Store, of course, SoundCloud, Spotify, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and Audacity. Thank you so much for AJ for getting that all set up so that once we get it live and get it up on our SoundCloud, it just distributes to all the podcasts, and you guys can have, the guys and gals can have it for your listening pleasure. And of course, check out that and more at Teal Town USA. I mean, we've got some great articles up there, and of course, we always post the replays up on the site as well. And for Mark and the whole crew, I mean, we really appreciate everybody joining us this afternoon. Kind of a weird game, but Mark, what are your final thoughts on where the people can find you?
People can find me at SJS on Twitter. And for final thoughts, I'm just very interested to see if any of the other young guys are called up for the rest of the season. Maybe Boards gets called up. But it'll be interesting to see if they are using the final, 15 or so games now to maybe see what they have in some of these prospects. So I'll be keeping an eye out for that.
Awesome. Well, appreciate that, and of course, I think we'll have the summer recap. We'll have the draft day lead up, which of course I know that you're always a fan of, and always fun to bring you on and stuff. So
best day of the year.
with the way that the Sharks are rolling, I think you're right on that one. And as far as my final thoughts go, look, I've been preaching it all year. I just want to see some good fundamentals. I want to see the kids, come into a structure and come into a style of play that, doesn't speak desperation, and I think the Sharks have a long way to go on that. But as far as where you can find me, you can use my first name. That's ERIKLANDI across all of the social media garbage. Wherever it is, we're there. And again, check us out on all the social media at Teal Town USA as well. We've got some great stuff on the Instagram, great stuff, from the Twitter as always. Following Barracuda, Teal tinted glasses, and of course tomorrow we got Pucknologist. We'll have AJ and Puck. Hockey Jerk, excuse me, go over the goings on for the Sharks, the trade deadline recap, and I'm sure that they have some thoughts. Check that out at 7 tomorrow. So that's 7 PST. All right. Well, from all of us, you know what we like to say: keep it real, keep it Teal, keep it real Teal, and we'll catch you after the next game. Thank you, everybody, and have a great evening.